The smell of pine and cinnamon hung thick in the air of the diner, mixing with the grease from the fryer and the bitter tang of overbrewed coffee. Christmas lights blinked erratically along the windows, casting red and green shadows across empty booths. My feet ached, a deep, bone-weary throb that radiated up my calves and settled in my lower back. 8 hours. 8 hours of forced smiles, of pretending the holiday cheer plastered on every surface didn't make the loneliness cut deeper. I wiped down the counter for the 3rd time, my reflection staring back at me from the chrome napkin dispenser. Dark circles under my eyes. Hair pulled into a messy bun that had given up hours ago. The cheap polyester uniform clung to my skin, damp with sweat and the residue of 1,000 orders I'd carried tonight. "You heading out soon, sweetie?" Marlene called from the kitchen, her voice scratchy from decades of cigarettes. "Yeah, just finishing up." My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. Christmas Eve. Everyone else had somewhere to be. Families gathered around tables laden with food. Couples exchanging gifts by glowing trees. And me? I'd volunteered for the closing shift, because an empty apartment felt worse than serving strangers who barely looked at me. The bell above the door chimed. I glanced up, ready to recite the "we're closing" speech I'd perfected. But the words died in my throat. She wasn't what I expected. Mid-50s, maybe, with kind eyes and an expensive coat that looked out of place in our rundown diner. Her heels clicked against the checkered linoleum as she approached the counter, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, something floral and sophisticated that didn't belong in a place that smelled like yesterday's meatloaf. "We're about to close, ma'am, but I can get you something to go. I'm not here to eat." She smiled, and something about it made my chest tighten. Pity. I recognized it immediately. "I'm Maria. I come here sometimes for the pie. You served me last week, remember?" I didn't, but I nodded anyway. Faces blurred together after a while. "You mentioned you'd be working tonight, Christmas Eve." She set her purse on the counter, fingers drumming against the worn formica. "Do you have plans after your shift?" The question landed like a stone in my stomach. No, not really. "My nephew," she continued, her voice gentle, careful. "He's alone tonight, too. His family, well, it's complicated, but he's a good man, and I hate thinking of him spending Christmas in that big house by himself." I should have said no, should have recognized the warning signs, the careful way she watched me, the practiced ease of her pitch. But exhaustion makes you stupid. Loneliness makes you desperate. "A blind date?" The words tasted strange in my mouth. "Just dinner. Company. 2 people who shouldn't be alone on Christmas." She pulled out her phone, showed me a picture. "His name is Dante. He owns some businesses in the city. He's harmless, I promise." The photo showed a man in his early 30s, dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Handsome in a way that made my stomach flip. Too handsome. Men who looked like that didn't need blind dates arranged by their aunts. "I don't know. Please." Maria's hand covered mine, warm and soft. "Just a few hours. You'd be doing me a favor. I worry about him." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Through the window, I could see snow beginning to fall, fat flakes that would probably turn to slush by morning. My apartment waited. Cold, dark, silent, except for the neighbor's TV bleeding through the thin walls. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Just dinner." Maria's smile brightened. She pulled out a card, pressed it into my palm, an address in the North End, embossed in gold. 9 o'clock. "Wear something nice. And, honey," she squeezed my hand. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." I stood outside my apartment building 2 hours later, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The dress I'd found in the back of my closet, a simple black number I'd bought for a job interview that never pandereered out, felt inadequate. Everything felt inadequate. My coat had a missing button, my heels were scuffed. I'd done what I could with makeup, but I still looked like exactly what I was, a waitress playing dress-up. The car that pulled up made my heart stutter. Black. Sleek. The kind of vehicle that cost more than I'd make in 5 years. It glided to the curb like a predator, silent and precise. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. A man emerged from the driver's side. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my rent. He didn't smile as he approached, didn't speak. Just opened the rear door and stood waiting, his eyes scanning the street with mechanical efficiency. "Miss Hayes?" His voice carried an accent I couldn't place. "Mr. Dante is expecting you." This was wrong. Everything about this screamed wrong. But I found myself moving toward the car, my feet carrying me forward even as my brain shouted warnings. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Expensive cologne, maybe, or just the scent of money. The door closed behind me with a heavy thunk that sounded too much like a cell door locking. The drive took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. We left my neighborhood, the check-cashing places, the convenience stores with barred windows, the graffitied walls, and entered a different world, brownstones with wreaths on the doors. Streets lined with cars that gleamed under the streetlights, people walking dogs, carrying shopping bags, living lives I'd only seen in movies. The driver didn't speak, didn't even glance at me in the rearview mirror. Just drove with the focused intensity of someone who'd done this route 1,000 times. We pulled up to a building that made my throat dry. Not a restaurant. A home. 5 stories of brick and stone, windows glowing with warm light, a door that looked like it belonged in a castle. 2 men stood outside, hands clasped in front of them, earpieces visible even from the car. Security. "This isn't a restaurant," I said, my voice cracking. The driver finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Dante prefers privacy. He's waiting inside." Every instinct screamed at me to run, to throw open the door and sprint back to my tiny apartment, my empty refrigerator, my lonely Christmas. But then, the building's door opened, and Maria appeared, waving, her smile bright and encouraging. "Come on, sweetie. You're just in time." My legs felt like lead as I stepped out of the car. The cold bit through my thin coat, but I barely felt it. The men at the door watched me approach, their eyes tracking my every movement. One of them spoke into his wrist, too quiet for me to hear. Maria took my arm, guiding me inside. "He's a little nervous," she whispered, as if sharing a secret. "It's been a long time since he's done anything like this." The interior was worse than the exterior. No, not worse. Better, terrifyingly better. Marble floors. A chandelier that probably cost more than my car, if I'd had a car. Art on the walls that looked real, original, the kind you saw in museums. A curved staircase that led to floors I couldn't see. And the smell. Not pine and cinnamon like the diner. Cedar and smoke. Expensive leather. And underneath it all, something darker. Danger wrapped in luxury. "He's in the dining room," Maria said. But she'd already released my arm, already stepped back, her job done. I walked down the hall alone, my heels clicking against marble. Each step echoed, announcing my presence, my intrusion into a world I didn't belong in. Through open doorways, I glimpsed rooms furnished like movie sets, a library with floor-to-ceiling books, a sitting room with furniture that looked antique, valuable. The dining room took my breath away. A table long enough to seat 20, but set for 2. Candles everywhere, their flames dancing in the draft from my entrance. A tree in the corner, decorated with ornaments that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. And standing by the window, his back to me, a figure that made everything else in the room disappear. He was taller than I'd expected from the photo. Broader. The suit he wore fit like it had been made for him. Because of course it had, emphasizing shoulders that looked capable of carrying weight I couldn't imagine. Dark hair, slightly too long, curling at the collar, hands clasped behind his back, one thumb rubbing against his palm in a gesture that seemed almost nervous. "Miss Hayes." His voice rolled through the room like distant thunder, deep and measured. He didn't turn around. "Thank you for coming." I should have said something. Should have responded with the polite pleasantries you exchange when meeting someone new. But my throat had closed, my tongue thick and useless in my mouth. He turned. The photo hadn't done him justice. Couldn't have captured the way his presence filled the space, making the enormous room feel suddenly intimate. Dark eyes that fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. A face that was handsome, yes, but hard. All sharp angles and shadows, the kind of face that had seen things, done things, a thin scar cut through his left eyebrow. Barely visible, but there if you looked. And he was looking at me. Really looking. In a way that made me feel stripped bare. Every inadequacy exposed. You're cold. It wasn't a question. He moved toward me, and I noticed how controlled his movements were. Deliberate. As if he had to consciously moderate his strength. "Let me take your coat." His fingers brushed my shoulders as he slid the coat off, and I swear I felt electricity shoot down my spine. He handed it to someone I hadn't noticed. Another man in a suit, materializing from the shadows and disappearing just as quickly. "Please, sit," he gestured to the table, pulling out a chair himself. The gentleman's gesture felt strange coming from someone who radiated such raw power. I sat because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. He took the seat across from me, and I realized the placement was strategic. Close enough to see every expression, every flinch, but far enough that I couldn't easily flee. "Maria tells me you work at Tony's diner." He reached for a bottle of wine I hadn't noticed, pouring deep red liquid into crystal glasses. "How long have you been there?" 2 years. My voice sounded foreign. "It's just temporary, until I figure out what's next." A slight smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Most temporary things become permanent. We tell ourselves we're just passing through, but one day we look up and realize we've built a life in the interim. There was something in his tone, experience maybe, or regret. I wrapped my hands around the wine glass, needing something to anchor me. The crystal was so fine I feared it would shatter at my touch. "You didn't want to be here tonight," he said. And it wasn't a question. Maria can be persuasive. "Neither did you, I'm guessing." The words came out before I could stop them, emboldened by nerves and the absurdity of the situation. His eyebrow, the one with the scar, lifted slightly. "No," he agreed. "I didn't." But I'm glad she insisted. Footsteps approached, and suddenly the room filled with people. Not guests, staff. They moved with synchronized precision, placing plates in front of us, filling water glasses, adjusting napkins. Food appeared like magic, courses I couldn't name, presentations so elaborate they looked too beautiful to eat, and through it all, Dante watched me. Not the food, not the carefully choreographed service. Me. "This is too much," I whispered when the staff retreated, leaving us alone again. "I'm just a waitress. I don't—" "You're not just anything." His voice had an edge now, sharp enough to cut. "Don't diminish yourself." The command in his tone made me flinch. This wasn't polite dinner conversation. This was something else entirely. I picked up my fork, more to have something to do with my hands than from actual hunger. The food tasted like air, or maybe I was too nervous to register flavor. Every sound seemed amplified. The clink of silverware, the rustle of his movements, my own too loud breathing. "Tell me about yourself," he said, cutting into his food with mechanical precision. Beyond the diner, beyond tonight, what was there to tell? My life was small, forgettable. But his eyes demanded an answer, so I gave him fragments. College dropout, dead-end jobs, an apartment I could barely afford. Dreams that had withered from neglect. He listened like every word mattered, his focus so complete it felt physical, a weight pressing against my skin. "And family?" he asked. "Why spend Christmas alone?" The question hit harder than intended. "There's no one," I said simply. "My mom died when I was 20. I don't know where he is, Dad. It's just me." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "I know what that's like. Being alone." "You have Maria," I pointed out. "I have Maria," he agreed. "And a dozen other people who depend on me, work for me, need things from me. But being surrounded by people isn't the same as not being alone." The vulnerability in those words surprised me. For a moment, the hard mask slipped, and I glimpsed something underneath. Something tired. Something human. The moment shattered when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. The softness vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against marble. "Excuse me." The words were clipped, controlled. He was already moving toward the door, the phone pressed to his ear, his voice dropping to a low growl I couldn't decipher. I sat alone in the enormous room, surrounded by luxury I couldn't comprehend, and realized I'd made a terrible mistake. This wasn't just dinner. This wasn't a lonely man seeking company on Christmas. This was something else entirely. Through the doorway, I heard voices. Dante's, sharp and commanding, and others responding with deference that bordered on fear. Words filtered through. Problem, shipment, handle it. My hands started shaking. I set down my fork before I dropped it, the metallic clatter too loud in the silence. He returned 5 minutes later, his expression carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed at his sides. "I apologize," he said, retaking his seat. "That was unavoidable." "What do you do?" The question came out before I could stop it. "Maria said you own businesses, but..." "But?" He picked up his wine glass, studying me over the rim. "But this doesn't feel like a businessman's house." The truth tumbled out, reckless and dangerous. "This feels like a fortress." His smile was razor sharp. "Perhaps I have enemies." "What kind of businessman has enemies like this?" I gestured vaguely at the room, at the security I'd noticed, at the phone call that had transformed him into someone terrifying. He set down his glass with deliberate care. The kind who deals in things people want but aren't supposed to have. The kind who solves problems others can't. The kind your mother warned you about. He leaned forward, and I could smell his cologne now, cedar and something darker, intoxicating and terrifying. "The kind you should run from, Miss Hayes." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Are you warning me or threatening me?" "I'm being honest." His eyes held mine, and I couldn't look away. "You walked into something tonight you don't understand." My aunt thought she was doing us both a favor, but she put you in a position neither of us asked for. "Then let me leave." I pushed back from the table, my legs unsteady. He moved faster than I expected, circling the table in 3 long strides, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I should," he said quietly, dangerously. "I should have my driver take you home right now. But I don't want to." "What do you want?" The question trembled between us. His hand lifted, hovering near my face, not quite touching, "Something I have no right to." The air between us crackled with tension. I should have been terrified, should have run screaming from this house. This man, this dangerous Christmas Eve that had spiraled into something I couldn't control. But I didn't move. His phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. This time, anger flashed across his face, raw, barely contained. He looked at the screen, and whatever he saw there made his expression darken. "I need to handle something," he said, his voice tight. "It can't wait. But don't leave. Please." The last word sounded like it cost him something to say. He was gone before I could respond, his footsteps echoing down the hall, followed by other footsteps, other voices. The house suddenly felt alive with activity I couldn't see, movement in the shadows, doors opening and closing. I stood alone in the dining room, surrounded by half-eaten food and guttering candles, and realized I'd somehow stumbled into a world that operated by rules I didn't understand. A world where a simple Christmas dinner was never simple. A world where the handsome man with the sad eyes and dangerous smile wasn't what his aunt pretended he was. And the most terrifying part, even knowing that, even sensing the danger that clung to him like smoke, I couldn't make myself leave. I should have called a cab, should have walked out the front door and never looked back. Instead, I found myself wandering through the first floor of Dante's house like a ghost, drawn by curiosity and something deeper I didn't want to name. The library called to me, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with leather-bound volumes that looked actually read, not just decorative. I ran my fingers along the spines, feeling the embossed titles under my fingertips. Dante in Italian, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu's Art of War, books about strategy, power, survival. He reads them all. Maria's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, her kind eyes now carrying something else. Assessment, maybe, or concern. Every night before bed. Says it helps him think. Maria, what does he really do? I turned to face her, needing answers. Please don't lie to me. She moved into the room, her heels silent on the Persian rug. For a long moment, she studied me, weighing something internal. He protects people, she finally said, in his own way. The family business. It's complicated. Old world, new world, traditions that don't fit in normal conversation. The Mafia. The word tasted foreign in my mouth, like something from movies, not real life. She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either, just looked at me with those sad, knowing eyes. He's not what you think. Yes. He's dangerous. Yes. He's done things that would horrify you. But he's also the only person who showed up when my daughter was dying, who paid every hospital bill, who held my hand at her funeral when everyone else had somewhere more important to be. Her voice cracked. He's the boy I helped raise after his parents were killed, the man who remembers every birthday, every anniversary. The nephew who shouldn't be alone on Christmas because he's already alone every other day of his life. Footsteps approached, heavy, multiple sets. Dante appeared with 2 men flanking him, their faces grim. He stopped when he saw me, something flickering across his expression. I thought you'd left, he said quietly. I should have, but you didn't. He dismissed the men with a subtle gesture, and they disappeared instantly, well-trained shadows. Maria excused herself too, leaving us alone in the library filled with books about war and strategy. Dante moved to the window, staring out at the snow that had begun to fall harder. There was an incident tonight. One of my warehouses. Nothing you need to worry about. A warehouse for what? I moved closer, drawn despite every self-preservation instinct screaming at me to maintain distance. He turned, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. Raw. Unguarded. Things that would make you see me differently. Things I can't take back or apologize for because they're who I am. He took a step toward me. I'm trying to decide if I want you to know the truth or if I'd rather you kept the illusion for just a little longer. I already know. My voice was steadier than I felt. You're involved in something illegal, something dangerous. That's why you have armed guards and bulletproof cars and a house that looks like a fortress. And you're still here. It wasn't a question, but wonder colored his tone. Why? I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, and it was too pathetic to speak aloud. That loneliness made you stupid, that the way he looked at me made me feel seen for the first time in years. That danger wrapped in expensive suits was still preferable to another empty Christmas alone. His phone buzzed again. He silenced it without looking. They can wait. Can they? I challenged. You run an empire, Dante. I'm just a waitress who said yes to a blind date. We both know how this ends. He moved fast, closing the distance between us until I could count the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. How does it end, Maya? My name and his voice sounded like a prayer and a curse. Tell me. Because I'm trying to figure out why meeting you feels like the first real thing that's happened to me in a decade. His hand lifted to my face, and this time he made contact, fingers tracing my jawline with devastating gentleness. The touch sent electricity racing down my spine, pooling low in my belly. I should have pulled away, should have remembered who he was, what he was. Instead, I leaned into his palm, and his eyes darkened. This is a mistake, he murmured. But his thumb was brushing across my lower lip now, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Probably, I whispered. He kissed me. Not gently. There was nothing gentle about Dante. It was possession and desperation, his hand tangling in my hair, the other gripping my waist like he was afraid I'd disappear. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his shirt, feeling the hard muscles beneath expensive fabric. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, and I felt him trembling. This powerful, dangerous man trembling from one kiss. Stay tonight, he said, his voice rough. Not for, just stay. I don't want to be alone. I don't want you to be alone. Every rational thought screamed no. Every survival instinct I possessed demanded I run. But something in his voice, that raw vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide, made me nod. Okay. He gave me a room on the 3rd floor. a guest suite that was bigger than my entire apartment. The bed looked like something from a palace, piled with pillows and covered in silk sheets. A fireplace crackled in the corner, filling the space with warm, dancing light. "There are clothes in the closet," Dante said from the doorway, maintaining careful distance now, as if that kiss had scared him as much as it had me. "They should fit. And if you need anything, there's a phone by the bed. Just dial 0. "Who answers?" I asked. "Security?" A ghost of a smile. "Something like that. Try to sleep, Maya. Tomorrow we'll figure out what happens next." He started to leave, but I caught his arm. "Dante? Thank you. For tonight. For not lying to me." His expression softened, and he pressed a kiss to my forehead. Chaste, tender. Nothing like the one in the library. "Lock the door after me, and don't open it for anyone but me." The implied threat in those words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt oddly safe. I locked the door as instructed and explored the closet. Designer clothes with tags still attached hung in neat rows, women's clothes in various sizes, as if he'd prepared for any possibility. I chose soft pajamas, cashmere that felt like a cloud against my skin. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion dragged me under almost immediately. I dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous smiles, of hands that could hurt but chose gentleness, of a kiss that tasted like Christmas and sin. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back. The blind date, the fortress house, Dante's kiss in the library. Someone had left a tray outside my door. Coffee, pastries, fresh fruit arranged artfully on fine china. A note in bold, masculine handwriting. "Good morning. Join me for breakfast when you're ready. Third door on the left, second floor." D. I showered in a bathroom that had more marble than most museums, dried off with towels that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and found clothes laid out on the bed that fit perfectly. Jeans that actually fit my curves, a soft sweater in deep green, even undergarments in my size. The attention to detail was either thoughtful or deeply unsettling. Maybe both. Following Dante's directions, I found him in a sun-drenched breakfast room that overlooked a garden buried in snow. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and commanding. "I don't care what excuse he gives. He had one job and he failed. Make an example." He paused, listening. "No, I'll handle Romano myself. Set up a meeting for tonight." Another pause, and his voice dropped to something deadly. "If he resists, remind him what happened to the last person who thought they could steal from me." He turned and saw me frozen in the doorway. Something shifted in his expression, the cold calculation melting into something warmer, more human. "I have to go," he said into the phone, then ended the call without waiting for a response. "Maya, I wasn't sure you'd still be here." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted, moving into the room. The table was set for 2, laden with food that looked professionally prepared. "Do you always eat breakfast like this?" "Usually I don't eat breakfast at all," Maria insisted. "Once she learned you'd stayed." He pulled out a chair for me, that old-world courtesy at odds with the violent conversation I'd just overheard. "I hope you slept well. Better than I should have, considering." I sat, acutely aware of how close he was, how his cologne, that cedar and smoke scent, made my head spin. "Who's Romano?" His jaw tightened. "Someone who made a poor decision. It doesn't concern you. You're going to hurt him. Not a question. I'm going to teach him why stealing from me is a fatal mistake." He sat across from me, pouring coffee with steady hands that had probably broken bones, pulled triggers, done things I couldn't imagine. "Does that frighten you?" It should have. God, it should have. But looking at him in the morning light, seeing the shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept, the way his fingers drummed against the table in barely contained tension, I felt something else entirely. "Yes," I said honestly, "but not enough to leave." Satisfaction flashed across his face, quickly masked. "Eat. We have things to discuss." The food was incredible, but I barely tasted it. Dante watched me between bites of his own meal, his gaze intense, cataloging every movement. "I need to tell you something," he said finally, setting down his fork with deliberate care. "And you're not going to like it." My stomach clenched. "What?" "Last night, after you fell asleep, I had my people run a background check on you." He held up a hand before I could protest. Standard procedure. Anyone who enters my home, my life, gets vetted. I don't apologize for it. Anger flared, hot and immediate. You had no right. I had every right. His voice cut through my protest, sharp as a blade. You're in my world now, Maya, whether either of us planned it. That means I need to know everything about you. For your protection as much as mine. My protection? I laughed, bitter and sharp. From what? From my enemies. From people who would hurt you just to get to me. He leaned forward, and the intensity in his eyes pinned me in place. The moment you walked through my door, the moment we kissed, you became a target. Anyone who learns you matter to me will try to use you as leverage. The words should have sent me running. Instead, I heard something else buried beneath them. I matter to you? We just met. I know. He looked almost angry about it, frustrated by something he couldn't control. I know it's insane, but from the moment I turned around and saw you standing in my dining room, looking terrified and brave and so fucking beautiful it hurt. He stopped, jaw working. Something changed. Something I didn't plan for and don't know how to handle. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dante, your background check came back clean. Almost too clean. You're exactly what you appear to be. A woman working too hard for too little, alone in a city that doesn't care if you disappear. His voice gentled, but there was one thing that stood out, your father. Ice flooded my veins. What about him? Robert Hayes. Disappeared 8 years ago after being questioned about embezzlement from his employer, a construction company that did work for various organizations. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Organizations connected to my family. The room tilted. What are you saying? I'm saying your father stole from people I'm associated with. $500,000 that was supposed to go to certain projects. He vanished before anyone could recover the money. Dante's eyes bore into mine. I'm saying there's a file on him, a debt unpaid. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was telling me. My father, useless, absent, the man who'd abandoned my dying mother and disappeared into the wind, was connected to the Mafia. You think I know where he is? My voice sounded hollow, distant. You think that's why I'm here? No. He stood, moving around the table toward me. I don't think that at all, but others might. When word gets out that you're under my protection, people will ask questions. They'll dig into your past. They'll find that connection. Under your protection? I stood too, needing to move, to escape the suffocating weight of his revelations. I'm not under anything. I'm leaving. This was a mistake. His hand caught my wrist, gentle but immovable. You can't leave. Watch me. Maya, listen to me. He pulled me closer, and I hated how good it felt, how safe despite everything screaming that he was the danger. My people aren't the only ones who ran that background check. By now, every family in the city knows you spent the night here. They know I kept you when I should have sent you home. They're already making assumptions, drawing conclusions. What kind of conclusions? But I already knew. Could see it in the grim set of his jaw. That you're mine. That you matter. That hurting you would hurt me. His other hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. I can't undo that. I can't send you back to your apartment and pretend nothing happened. You'd be dead within a week. The words landed like physical blows. This is insane. You're insane. We had one dinner, and one kiss that rewrote every rule I have about keeping people at distance. His forehead pressed against mine, and I felt him shaking again, that barely contained emotion that seemed so at odds with his reputation. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. But I can't let you go now. I won't. You're keeping me prisoner. The accusation hung between us, ugly and true. I'm keeping you alive. He pulled back, and the look in his eyes was raw, desperate. Stay. Give me time to handle this, to make you safe again. And if I refuse? Something dark flickered across his face. Then I'll have to make that choice for you. The threat was clear, unmistakable. But underneath it, I heard something else. Fear. He was afraid. afraid of what would happen to me, afraid of what he was becoming, afraid of feelings he couldn't control. I should have fought, should have screamed, demanded my freedom, called the police. Though what good would that do against a man who probably had half the force on his payroll? Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Why? Why do you care what happens to me? His laugh was bitter, self-mocking. Because for the first time in 10 years, I felt something other than emptiness when I looked at another person. Because you didn't flinch when I told you what I was. Because you're standing here arguing with me instead of cowering, and it's the most real conversation I've had since... He stopped, jaw clenched. I don't know why, Maya. I just know that the thought of someone hurting you makes me want to burn the entire city to ash. The intensity in his voice should have terrified me. Maybe part of me was terrified. But another part, the lonely, desperate part that had said yes to a blind date just to avoid spending Christmas alone, felt something else entirely. Wanted, protected, seen, even if it came wrapped in danger and threats in a gilded cage. How long? I asked quietly. How long do I have to stay? Relief flooded his features, so profound it almost hurt to witness. Until I make you safe, until everyone in this city knows that touching you means war. His hand slid down to lace his fingers through mine, and the gesture felt more intimate than any kiss. I have enemies, Maya, powerful ones who would love nothing more than to find my weakness and exploit it. But I also have resources. Influence, people who owe me favors, give me time to use them. I looked around the breakfast room, at the luxury I'd never known, at the man holding my hand like I was something precious and breakable. What if I said I wanted to leave anyway? That I'd take my chances? His grip tightened fractionally. I'd stop you. Lock you in this house if I had to. Assign guards to watch your every move. His voice dropped to something almost pleading. But I'm hoping you won't make me. I'm hoping you'll choose to stay. To trust me. Trust. What a joke. Trust a man who ran a criminal empire, who'd just admitted to running background checks and making threats. Trust someone who kissed me like salvation and trapped me like prey. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something that made the choice easier. He was as trapped as I was, caught in a situation neither of us had planned, feeling things that terrified us both, unable to walk away even though we should. I'll stay, I said finally, and watched relief and something darker, possession maybe, flash across his face. But I want answers. I want to know everything. What you do, who you are, what I'm really caught in. Agreed. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like sealing a deal. A dangerous deal. A deal that might destroy me. But God help me. I couldn't bring myself to care. The next few days blurred together in a strange mixture of luxury and captivity. Dante kept his word about answers, though each revelation made me wish I'd stayed ignorant. He controlled territory across 3 states, gambling, protection, imports that never went through official channels. He had judges on payroll, cops who looked the other way, politicians who owed him favors they could never repay. When he spoke on the phone, grown men trembled. When he walked into a room, everyone else fell silent, and he was obsessed with keeping me safe. I couldn't leave the house without an escort of at least 3 armed men. My phone, he'd given me a new one, untraceable, had limited contacts. Maria visited daily, bringing clothes that actually fit, telling me stories about Dante as a boy that didn't match the dangerous man I was coming to know. He was gentle once, she said on the 3rd day, hemming a dress in the sitting room while I pretended to read, before his parents died, before he had to become this. What happened to them? I'd been afraid to ask Dante directly, sensing the wound was still raw despite the years. Maria's hands stilled on the fabric. Betrayal. Someone they trusted. Dante was 19, supposed to be at university, building a different life. Instead, he came home to find them executed in their own bedroom. Her voice dropped. He hunted down every person involved. Took him 2 years, but he found them all. Made examples that people still whisper about. The image didn't match the man who read to me from his library at night, who made sure I ate even when I wasn't hungry, who looked at me like I was something precious he was terrified of breaking. But it was the same man. That was the terrifying part. On the 4th night, everything changed. Dante had been gone all day, handling what he vaguely termed business complications. I'd learned not to ask for details about his absences. The tight set of his jaw when he returned told me enough. But tonight, when he finally came home near midnight, something was different. He was covered in blood, not his own. I realized with dawning horror. His movements were too fluid, too controlled. But his white shirt was splattered with crimson, his knuckles split and raw, and there was a wildness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "Don't look at me." His voice was rough, destroyed. He stood in the doorway of the library where I'd been waiting, frozen by the sight of him. "Not like this." "Please, Maya, don't." But I was already moving toward him, instinct overriding self-preservation. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I'm not the one who's hurt." He backed away from my approach, but I followed, relentless. "Romano." He thought he could run, thought he could steal from me and disappear. His laugh was hollow, bitter. "They always think they can run." My hands reached for his shirt, and he caught my wrists, holding me at bay. "I killed him, Maya. Slowly. Made sure he understood the price of betrayal before I put a bullet in his head." His eyes searched mine, desperate, waiting for the horror and rejection he clearly expected. "This is what I am. This is what I do. So please, for the love of God, go upstairs and lock your door and stop looking at me like I'm something worth saving." I should have run. Should have been disgusted, terrified, revolted by the violence literally staining his clothes. Instead, I saw past the blood to the exhaustion beneath it, the weight he carried, the loneliness that mirrored my own. "Let me help you clean up," I said quietly. His grip on my wrists tightened. "You should hate me." "I know." I met his wild gaze steadily, but I don't. Something broke in him. He released my wrists and pulled me against his chest, heedless of the blood, his face buried in my hair. I felt him shaking, felt the careful control he always maintained crumbling. "I don't deserve you," he whispered against my temple. "Don't deserve this, but I'm too selfish to let you go." I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the hard muscles beneath ruined fabric, the heat of him, the desperate way he held me like I was the only thing keeping him human. "Then don't." He pulled back just enough to look at me, and the raw need in his eyes made my breath catch. "Maya." I kissed him, rose on my toes and pressed my lips to his, tasting copper and desperation and something darker. He responded instantly, his blood-stained hands tangling in my hair, his mouth claiming mine with bruising intensity. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft or romantic. It was desperation and possession. Two lonely people finding something in each other they didn't know they needed. His hands mapped my body like he was memorizing every curve, every line, committing me to memory in case I disappeared. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I need to shower. To get this off me. I'll wait." "No." His thumb traced my lower lip, and his voice dropped to something rough and wanting. "Come with me." Every rational thought fled. I let him lead me upstairs to his private suite, a room I hadn't been allowed to enter before. It was masculine, spare, dominated by a massive bed that looked barely used, and windows that overlooked the snow-covered garden. The bathroom was all dark marble and chrome. He turned on the shower, steam beginning to fill the space, then turned to me with an expression that was part question, part challenge. I answered by reaching for the hem of my sweater. His hands covered mine, stopping me. "Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way that matters. In every way my enemies will understand." His eyes burned into mine. "Are you sure?" "No." I wasn't sure about anything except that being away from him hurt more than being near him, that his darkness called to something in me I didn't want to examine too closely, that loneliness had teeth and his touch made them release their grip. "I'm sure." He undressed me slowly, reverently, like unwrapping something sacred. Each piece of clothing removed revealed more of me, made me more vulnerable. But the way he looked at me, like I was art, like I was everything, made the vulnerability feel less like weakness and more like power. When I was bare before him, he shed his own ruined clothes, and I finally saw the full extent of what he was. Scars mapped his body, bullet wounds, knife marks, Burns that spoke of violence survived. Each one told a story of survival, of battles won at terrible cost. "You're beautiful," I whispered and meant it. His laugh was self-deprecating. "I'm a monster." "You're both." I reached up to trace the scar that cut through his eyebrow, and I'm starting to think I need both. He pulled me into the shower, hot water cascading over us, washing away the blood and horror of his night. His hands were gentle now, washing my hair, tracing patterns on my skin that made me shiver despite the heat. I did the same for him, watching crimson water circle the drain, cleaning away evidence of violence until only the man remained. When we were clean, he pressed me against the marble wall, his body a line of heat against mine. "Tell me to stop." "No." His mouth claimed mine again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. His hands mapped every inch of me, learning what made me gasp, what made me moan. I responded in kind, exploring the hard planes of his body, feeling powerful muscles tense under my touch. "Maya," he groaned against my throat, his control fracturing. "I need—" "Yes." I didn't need him to finish the sentence. I needed it too. Needed this connection, this proof that we were both still human, despite everything trying to make us otherwise. He lifted me effortlessly, my legs wrapping around his waist, and suddenly there was no space between us, no barriers, no pretense. Just raw need and desperate connection, and the feeling of finally being completely seen by another person. It wasn't gentle. Couldn't be, with all the emotion churning between us. But it was real. More real than anything I'd felt in years. His hands gripped my hips hard enough to bruise, claiming me, marking me as his. I returned the favor, nails raking down his back, pulling him closer, deeper, needing more. When we finally shattered together, his face buried in my neck, my name a prayer on his lips, I understood that I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I was his now, in every way that mattered, and terrifyingly, I wanted to be. We ended up in his bed, tangled together under silk sheets, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slowly return to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked peaceful. "I've never brought anyone here before," he said quietly into the darkness. "Never let anyone into this room, into this bed." "Why me?" "Because you see the monster, and stay anyway. Because you don't want anything from me except honesty. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it felt like to be human." His arm tightened around me, "Because I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Dante, I know it's fast. I know it's insane, but I've spent 10 years feeling nothing. And then you walked into my dining room looking terrified and beautiful, and everything changed." He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not alone in this. I should have lied. Should have protected myself, maintained distance, remembered that this was temporary." But looking into his dark eyes, seeing the vulnerability he hid from everyone else, I couldn't. "You're not alone," I whispered. "I feel it too." His kiss was gentle this time, tender, sealing something between us that went beyond physical connection. When he pulled back, his expression had hardened with determination. "Then I'm going to fix this. I'm going to find your father, recover the money he stole, settle the debt, and then you'll be free. Not because I'm letting you go, but because you'll have a choice to stay or leave, knowing everything, with no threats hanging over your head." And if I choose to leave, I had to ask, even though the thought already hurt. His jaw clenched. "Then I'll let you. It will destroy me, but I'll let you go." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "But I'm going to fight like hell to make you want to stay." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The third time in the past hour. He'd been ignoring it, but something about the insistent vibration made him tense. "I should check that," he muttered, reaching for it. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "Fuck, what is it?" "Your father." He sat up, all traces of softness vanishing as the boss reasserted control. "Someone knows where he is." My heart stopped. "What?" "One of my contacts in Atlantic City. He's been asking questions, flashing money around, using the name Robert Hayes." Dante was already moving, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. If my people found him, others will too. I need to get to him first. I scrambled out of bed, reaching for my own clothes. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. He turned to face me, and the expression on his face was pure command. It's too dangerous. You stay here where it's safe. He's my father, Dante. Whatever he did, whatever debt he owes, I deserve to face him. No. The word was final, absolute. I'm not risking you. Not for this. Anger flared, hot and immediate. You don't get to decide that. You said you'd give me answers, give me choice. This is my choice. We stared at each other, wills clashing. I saw the moment his resolve wavered, saw him weighing protection against my agency. Finally, he cursed under his breath. Fine, but you follow my orders exactly. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. Understood? Understood. He pulled me against him, his kiss hard and possessive. If anything happens to you, I will burn the world. Remember that. 30 minutes later, we were in his car, the bulletproof Mercedes with tinted windows, speeding through empty streets toward Atlantic City. 2 additional cars flanked us, filled with his men. Dante drove himself, his jaw set in grim determination, one hand on the wheel and the other resting possessively on my thigh. Tell me about him, he said as we hit the highway. Your father. I stared out at the darkness flying past. There's not much to tell. He was never around much, even before he left. Always had some scheme, some big score that would fix everything. Mom worked herself to death while he chased dreams that never materialized. Bitterness crept into my voice. When she got sick, he couldn't handle it. Disappeared 6 months before she died. Left me alone to watch her waste away. To make decisions about hospice care and funeral arrangements at 20 years old. Dante's hand tightened on my thigh. I'm sorry. Don't be. I learned early that the only person I could count on was myself. I turned to look at him. Until now, maybe. His expression softened fractionally. You can count on me, Maya. Whatever happens tonight, whatever we find, I've got you. It should have sounded arrogant, presumptuous. Instead, it sounded like a vow. We arrived at a rundown motel on the outskirts of Atlantic City just after 3 a.m. The neon sign flickered erratically, advertising vacancy in sputtering red letters. Dante's men surrounded the building before we even exited the car, moving with military precision to secure entrances and exits. Room 12, Dante said, checking his phone. 2nd floor. My contact says he's alone, but stay behind me regardless. We climbed the exterior stairs, our footsteps echoing in the pre-dawn silence. Dante positioned himself in front of me, one hand inside his jacket where I knew he kept a gun. At room 12, he paused, listening. Then he kicked the door open. The room was a disaster, clothes everywhere, empty bottles, the smell of cigarettes and desperation. And sitting on the bed, looking 10 years older than I remembered, was my father. He jumped at the intrusion, then froze when he saw Dante's gun. His eyes slid past the threat to land on me, and shock registered across his weathered face. Maya? His voice cracked on my name. How did you— Shut up! Dante's command cut through the air like a whip. Robert Hayes. You've been a hard man to find. My father's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. Dante moved further into the room, and I saw my father shrink back, recognizing the danger he faced. $500,000, stolen from a construction project 8 years ago. Money that belonged to people I represent. I can explain. I don't care about explanations. Dante's voice was cold, detached. The voice of a man who'd killed earlier that night without hesitation. I care about repayment, with interest. My father's eyes darted around the room, looking for escape, finding none. I don't have it. I spent it. Lost most of it in Atlantic City, drank the rest. Then you have a problem. Dante raised the gun slightly, because the debt still exists, and debts to my family get paid one way or another. Wait! I pushed past Dante, ignoring his warning growl. Standing before my father for the first time in 8 years, I felt nothing but cold clarity. You abandoned me. Left me alone with a dying woman who spent her last months asking where you were, why you didn't come. My voice shook with suppressed emotion. And now I find out you did it because you stole money from the Mafia? Because you were too stupid and selfish to think about the consequences? Shame flickered across his face. Maya, sweetheart, I never meant— Don't! The word cracked like a whip. Don't you dare call me that. You lost that right when you walked away. Dante's hand landed on my shoulder, gentle but firm. Maya, step back. I looked at him, saw the cold determination in his eyes, and understood what he intended to do. No, there has to be another way. There isn't. His gaze never left my father. He stole. He ran. Those crimes have consequences. Then let me pay them. The words came out before I could think them through. The debt. It transfers to me, as his daughter. Let me work it off. Dante's expression shifted, something dark and possessive flashing across his features. Maya, how much? I turned back to my father, whose face had gone from pale to gray. How much with interest? $750,000, Dante said quietly, plus penalties for the inconvenience of tracking him down. An impossible sum. A lifetime's worth of wages from my diner job. But as I looked between my pathetic father and the dangerous man who'd somehow become my salvation, I knew what I had to do. I'll pay it, however long it takes. Whatever I have to do. I met Dante's eyes. Just let him walk away. For a long moment, silence hung thick in the dingy motel room. Then Dante lowered his gun, though his expression remained hard. Fine. The debt transfers. But he leaves the city tonight and never comes back. If I see him again, if he contacts you again, if he so much as breathes in your direction, the deal is void, and I finish what I came here to do. He looked at my father with pure contempt. Do you understand? My father nodded frantically, already moving toward the door. He paused when he reached me, and for a moment, I thought he might apologize, might show some remorse for the devastation he'd caused. Instead, he just whispered, I'm sorry you got mixed up with people like him, and fled. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with Dante and the weight of what I'd just done. I'd bound myself to him more thoroughly than any kiss, any night together. I'd taken on a debt I could never repay, chained myself to his world by choice. That was incredibly stupid, Dante said quietly, but his hands were gentle as they turned me to face him. You just sold yourself to me for $750,000. I know. I met his gaze steadily. But he's still my father, no matter how terrible. I couldn't watch you kill him. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or something deeper. You're too good for this world, Maya. Too good for me. Then I guess we're both stuck with less than we deserve. He kissed me there in that dingy motel room that smelled of cigarettes and desperation, and somehow it felt more binding than anything that had come before. When he pulled back, his eyes burned with intensity. The debt is real. I'll hold you to it. But not because I want your money. His thumb traced my jaw. Because now you can never leave. You're mine. Completely and irrevocably, and God help anyone who tries to take you from me. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else. Security, maybe, or the twisted comfort of knowing I was wanted so completely that a dangerous man would kill to keep me. Then I guess I'm yours, I whispered against his lips. His smile was dark, triumphant, and completely devastating. Yes, he agreed, you are. The weeks following Atlantic City blurred into a strange new reality. I didn't return to my apartment. Dante sent people to pack my things, to terminate my lease, to erase that old life like it had never existed. The diner called twice before giving up. My few acquaintances stopped trying to reach me when my old number went dead. I existed now solely in Dante's world, and the terrifying part was how quickly I adapted. He gave me an office in his house, a beautiful room overlooking the garden where I was supposed to work off my debt by managing legitimate aspects of his business empire: property records, investment portfolios, charitable foundations that laundered money so cleanly even the IRS couldn't trace it. I learned quickly that Dante's empire had two faces: the violent underworld everyone feared, and the respectable businessman everyone courted. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon, reviewing documents I'd organized. We were in his study, him behind the massive desk, me curled in the leather chair across from him. A month had passed since Atlantic City. Snow had given way to early March rain. Better than my last 3 accountants, maybe because I'm not skimming off the top. I raised an eyebrow. His laugh was dark. Maybe. Though those 3 learned quickly why that was a mistake. He set down the papers, his gaze turning predatory. "Come here." I went. Always went when he called, drawn by gravity I couldn't resist. He pulled me onto his lap, his hands spanning my waist possessively. "I have a problem," he murmured against my throat, lips tracing patterns that made me shiver. "There's a meeting tonight. Heads of the 5 families. They want to meet you." I pulled back to look at him. "Why?" "Because rumors have spread. The untouchable Dante Vitale, who never takes a woman seriously, who built walls no one could breach, suddenly has someone living in his house, wearing his protection, carrying his heart." His expression darkened. "They'll want to assess if you're a weakness they can exploit." Fear spiked through me. And am I? Yes. No hesitation. Just brutal honesty. "You're the only weakness I have, which is why I need you beside me tonight. Showing them that touching you means declaring war on me personally. You want me to pretend to be your... what, girlfriend? Mistress?" His eyes flashed. "I want you to be exactly what you are. Mine. In every way that matters." His hand slid up to cup my face. "I'm not asking, Maya. I need you there." The possessiveness should have chafed. Instead, I found myself nodding. "What do I wear to meet mob bosses?" His smile was sharp. "Leave that to me." The dress he provided was devastating. Black silk that clung to every curve, slit high on the thigh, neckline that suggested more than it showed. Diamonds glittered at my throat and ears, borrowed from a collection that probably belonged to his mother. My hair was styled in elegant waves, makeup applied by a professional who appeared and disappeared like a ghost. When I descended the stairs, Dante was waiting in the foyer, and the look on his face made my breath catch. He wore a black suit that emphasized his dangerous elegance, his hair styled back, a watch that cost more than most cars glinting at his wrist. "Bellissima," he breathed, taking my hand and pulling me close. "You'll drive every man in that room insane with wanting what they can't have." "Is that the goal?" "The goal is making sure they know you're untouchable, that even looking at you wrong will cost them everything." His kiss was possessive, claiming. "Stay close to me tonight. Don't accept drinks from anyone else. Don't wander off, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately." The venue was a private club in the financial district, the kind of place that didn't advertise, where membership cost 6 figures and discretion was guaranteed. We entered through a back entrance, Dante's hand firm on my lower back, 4 of his men forming a protective box around us. The private dining room was already full when we arrived. Men in expensive suits, women draped in designer clothes and bored expressions. Conversations died as we entered, all eyes turning to assess the newcomer. "Dante?" An older man approached, silver-haired and distinguished, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We were beginning to think you'd changed your mind." "Lorenzo." Dante's greeting was cool, professional. I wouldn't miss the opportunity to introduce Maya to the families. Lorenzo's gaze slid to me, appraising, calculating. "So the rumors are true. The Ice King has thawed." He extended his hand. "Lorenzo Marchetti, a pleasure." I took his hand briefly, feeling Dante tense beside me. "Maya Hayes." "Hayes." Lorenzo's eyes sharpened with recognition. "Any relation to Robert Hayes?" The room fell silent. I felt Dante's hand press warningly against my back, but I kept my expression neutral. "My father, though we're not in contact." "Interesting." Lorenzo's smile turned calculating. "I heard that debt was recently resolved, transferred even. Very generous of you to assume responsibility for your father's mistakes." "The debt is settled," Dante cut in, his voice carrying a warning edge. "Maya works for me now, under my protection. I trust that's clear to everyone here." Murmurs rippled through the room. Another man approached, younger, handsome in a slick way that made my skin crawl. Clear as crystal, Dante. Though you can't blame us for being curious about the woman who accomplished what no one else could. Getting under your skin. Careful, Tony. Dante's voice dropped to something dangerous. You're walking a thin line. Tony raised his hands in mock surrender, but his eyes remained on me, assessing, hungry, just making conversation, no offense intended. We moved through the room, Dante introducing me to faces whose names I struggled to remember. Each interaction felt like navigating a minefield, subtext layered beneath polite conversation, threats wrapped in compliments, everyone gauging how to use this new information about Dante's weakness. Dinner was an elaborate affair, multiple courses, wine that probably cost more than my old monthly salary, conversation that danced around business while pretending to be social. I sat beside Dante, his hand possessively on my thigh under the table, his attention split between the discussions happening around us and monitoring every person who looked my way. You seem tense, I murmured during a lull in conversation. Because half the men in this room are imagining ways to use you against me, and the other half are just imagining you. His hand tightened on my leg. I'm trying very hard not to put bullets in people who are supposed to be my allies. Jealous? The word slipped out before I could stop it. His eyes locked on mine, burning with intensity. Possessive. There's a difference. Jealousy implies I'm worried about competition. Possessiveness means I know you're mine and I'll destroy anyone who forgets that. Heat pooled low in my belly at the raw claim in his voice. Dante, excuse me. A woman's voice cut through our moment. She was stunning. Late 20s, curves poured into a red dress, dark hair cascading down her back. I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Sofia Romano. The name registered with sickening clarity. Romano. Like the man Dante had killed the night we first made love, Dante's entire body went rigid. Sofia. I didn't realize you'd be here. Where else would I be? Her smile was sharp as a knife. My father is dead. Someone had to represent the family interests. Her eyes slid to me, calculating and cold. You must be the famous Maya, the woman my father died for. I'm sorry for your loss, I managed, though the words felt inadequate. Are you? She leaned closer, and I caught the scent of her expensive perfume. My father made a mistake. He stole, and he paid the price. I understand how this world works. Her smile turned vicious, but I also understand revenge, and debts, and how very vulnerable you must feel, knowing that you're the reason Dante pulled the trigger. Sofia. Dante's voice was lethal. Walk away. Now. Or what? You'll kill me too? She laughed, bright and brittle. You can't, Dante. The families wouldn't allow it, which means I can say whatever I want to your little pet. She turned her attention back to me. How does it feel, knowing you're sleeping with your father's executioner? Knowing that the hands that touch you at night have killed dozens of people? Do you close your eyes and pretend he's someone safe? Someone normal? Dante moved to stand, but I caught his arm. Something in Sofia's eyes, pain beneath the venom, grief masquerading as anger, made me respond instead of retreating. Your father made choices that led to his death. I'm sorry you're suffering for them, but taking it out on me won't bring him back. I kept my voice steady, refusing to show fear, and yes, I know what Dante is, what he's done. But I also know he's more than just the violence, more than the reputation. How touching. Sofia's expression hardened. How long do you think that idealism will last? A month? A year? Eventually you'll see him for what he really is. A monster in an expensive suit, and when you try to leave, when you realize your mistake, you'll discover that monsters don't let their toys go. That's enough. Dante was on his feet now, his presence commanding enough that nearby conversations stopped. You've made your point. But if you threaten Maya again, family politics won't save you. I've killed for less than disrespect toward what's mine. The entire room had fallen silent, watching the confrontation unfold. Lorenzo stood, his voice carrying authority. Perhaps we should all remember why we're here. Unity. Cooperation. Not settling personal vendettas. Sofia held Dante's gaze for another moment, then smiled coldly. Of course. Forgive my grief-stricken rudeness. She turned to me one last time. Enjoy your cage, Maya. I'm sure it's very comfortable. She walked away, leaving tension crackling in the air. Dante's jaw was clenched so tight I worried he'd crack teeth. Around us, conversation slowly resumed, but I could feel the weight of eyes still watching, assessing, filing away this drama for future use. We're leaving. Dante's tone brooked no argument. Now, he practically dragged me from the room, his men falling into formation around us. The ride home was silent, his anger radiating in waves I could almost touch. When we reached the house, he dismissed everyone curtly, then turned to me with barely controlled fury. That was a mistake. I should never have brought you there. I'm fine. You're not fine. His voice echoed through the foyer. Sofia Romano just threatened you in a room full of witnesses, and because of family politics, I can't do a damn thing about it. You're exposed now, vulnerable, and it's my fault for thinking I could protect you just by keeping you close. I moved toward him, but he backed away. Don't. I need to think. Need to figure out how to handle this before... His phone rang, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. He glanced at the screen and cursed viciously. What? His greeting was sharp, then his face went pale. When? How many? A pause. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at me with something like desperation. There's been an attack. One of my warehouses. 3 of my men are dead and the building is burning. His hands clenched into fists. This is a message. Someone is making a move against me and they're using tonight's dinner as a distraction. Go, I said immediately. Do what you need to do. I can't leave you alone. Not after Sofia's threat. Then leave guards. Maria. Someone. I cupped his face, forcing him to focus on me instead of the chaos unfolding. You have people depending on you. I'll be safe here. He kissed me hard, desperately. Lock yourself in my room. Don't open the door for anyone but me. If anything feels wrong, use the panic button I showed you. Another kiss. This one tasting like goodbye. I love you, Maya. I should have said it before, but I love you. And I will burn this entire city before I let anyone hurt you. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they felt like a lifeline. I love you too. Now go. He left with half his men, leaving the other half scattered through the house as guards. Maria appeared within minutes, her face drawn with worry. Come on, sweetie. Let's get you upstairs where it's safe. But as we climbed the stairs, as I heard the house settling into tense alertness around me, I couldn't shake Sofia's words. Monsters don't let their toys go. Was that what I was? A toy? A possession? Or had I become something more, something real enough that Dante would risk everything to keep me safe? The answer, I realized, might determine whether I survived what was coming. Because as I looked out the window of Dante's room, watching rain streak the glass, I understood with chilling clarity that the dinner tonight hadn't been about introductions or unity. It had been a declaration of war, and I was standing directly in the crossfire. The attack came 3 hours later. I was in Dante's bed, trying to sleep, when the first explosion rocked the house. The windows rattled in their frames, alarms shrieking to life, and suddenly the night erupted into chaos. Gunfire. Shouting. The sound of breaking glass and splintering wood. Maria burst through the door, her face white with terror. Maya, we need to move. Now. What's happening? They're here, inside the house. She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the hidden door in the wall that Dante had shown me. A panic room, he'd called it, in case of emergencies. Dante's on his way back, but we need to hide you until... Another explosion. Closer this time. The lights flickered and died, emergency lighting casting everything in eerie red. Through the windows, I could see muzzle flashes in the garden, shadows moving with military precision. How many? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the terror flooding my veins. Too many. Maria got the panic room door open, revealing a small, reinforced space with supplies and weapons. Get inside. Lock it from within. Don't open it for anyone until you hear Dante's voice. What about you? I'll lead them away, make them think you ran. Her eyes filled with fierce determination. You're the closest thing I have to a daughter now, Maya. I won't let them take you. Before I could protest, She shoved me inside and slammed the door. I heard the lock engage from the outside, heard her footsteps running in the opposite direction, heard her voice shouting something about the garage. Then nothing but my own harsh breathing and the muted sounds of battle filtering through reinforced walls. I huddled in the darkness, surrounded by bottled water and protein bars, and guns I barely knew how to use, and waited. Waited for Dante to come, waited to discover if love wrapped in violence was strong enough to survive when that violence finally came home. Waited to learn if I was more than just a weakness to be exploited, if I was worth the war Dante had promised to wage. The answer, I knew, would determine everything. Time became meaningless in the panic room. Minutes felt like hours, each sound making my heart race. Was that Dante's voice or an enemy's? Were those footsteps salvation or death approaching? The gunfire eventually stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I pressed my ear against the reinforced door, straining to hear anything. Voices, too muffled to distinguish. Footsteps on the floor above. Then, cutting through it all, a voice I recognized. Maya! Dante's roar shook the walls. Maya, where are you? I scrambled for the lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the mechanism. The door swung open, and suddenly he was there, covered in blood and soot, his suit torn, a gash across his cheek, but alive. Alive and looking at me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning, thank God. He pulled me against him so hard it hurt, his face buried in my hair. I felt him trembling, felt the terror he'd been holding back finally breaking through. When I got here and saw the damage, I thought I'd lost you. Maria, I managed to ask, even though part of me didn't want to know. His expression darkened. She's alive, in the hospital. She took 2 bullets leading them away from you. His hands cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. She saved your life, Maya. If she hadn't... He couldn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. I could see it in his eyes, the abyss he'd nearly fallen into. The violence he was barely keeping contained. Who did this? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Tony Battaglia. The name dripped with venom. He thought taking you would give him leverage, force me to concede territory. He was wrong. Dante's smile was terrifying in its coldness. I've killed 7 of his men tonight. The rest are in my basement, waiting to tell me where to find him. The casual mention of torture should have horrified me. Instead, I felt only grim satisfaction. These people had tried to kill me, had hurt Maria, had violated the one place that had started to feel like home. What happens now? I asked. Now? He pulled back slightly, studying my face like he was memorizing it. Now I end this. Permanently. Tony declared war when he attacked my home, threatened what's mine. The families will understand. Some will even approve. But Maya... His voice dropped. What comes next will be brutal, violent. Everything you've been sheltered from will be impossible to ignore. I need to know if you can handle that. If you can handle me when I'm not holding back. I thought about the past 2 months, about falling in love with a dangerous man, about choosing him over safety, over normalcy, over everything my old life represented, about Maria risking her life to protect me, about the debt I'd taken on, the world I'd entered. I'm not leaving, I said firmly. Whatever you need to do, whatever happens, I'm staying. Something shifted in his expression, relief and possession, and love so intense it burned. Then marry me. The words hung in the air between us, impossible and inevitable all at once. What? Marry me. He said it again more forcefully, not because of the debt, not because of tonight, because I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone, because you see the monster and stay anyway. Because I want everyone in this world to know you're mine and I'm yours, permanently and irrevocably. His thumb traced my jaw. Because I'm tired of living in darkness, and you're the only light I've found in 10 years. Tears burned my eyes. Dante, I know it's insane. I know it's too fast, too dangerous, too everything. But I also know that life is short and violent, and tomorrow isn't guaranteed, and I don't want to waste another second not having all of you. His forehead pressed against mine. Say yes, Maya. Choose this life. Choose me. Every rational thought screamed no. This was a man who killed without hesitation, who lived by violence, who would drag me deeper into a world most people only saw in movies. A man whose enemies had just attacked his home trying to kidnap me. A man who'd warned me himself that he was a monster. But he was also the man who'd made me feel seen for the first time in my life. Who'd taken on my father's debt and turned it into protection instead of punishment. Who read to me from his library at night and remembered how I took my coffee. Who trembled when he held me like I was something precious he was terrified of breaking. Who loved me despite every reason not to. Yes, I whispered, and watched his expression transform into something beautiful and terrifying. Yes, I'll marry you. His kiss was claiming, possessive, sealing a promise that would bind us together in ways that terrified and exhilarated me. When he pulled back, his eyes burned with determination. Stay here with the guards. I'll be back by morning. His voice had shifted back to the cold command of the boss. And when I return, Tony Battaglia will never threaten us again. Be careful. His laugh was dark. Careful isn't what tonight requires. But I'll come back to you. Always. One more kiss, desperate and deep. I love you, Maya Hayes. Soon to be Maya Vitale. Then he was gone, taking half his remaining men, leaving me with guards and the aftermath of violence and a proposal that changed everything. Dante returned as dawn painted the sky pink and gold. I hadn't slept. Had spent the night helping clean up the damage with the staff who'd survived, checking on Maria at the hospital through video calls, trying not to imagine what Dante was doing in the dark. He found me in the library, surrounded by books that had been knocked from shelves during the attack. Blood still stained his clothes, not his own, I knew instinctively. His eyes carried the weight of violence inflicted, but when they landed on me, they softened. It's done, he said simply. Tony is dead. His operation is scattered. The families have been notified that anyone who comes after you will face the same fate. I set down the books I'd been holding. How many? 12, including Tony. No hesitation, no apology. Just fact. They chose their path when they attacked my home. I should have been horrified, should have seen him as the monster Sophia had warned me about. Instead, I saw a man who'd done terrible things to protect what he loved, who'd become darkness so I could stay in the light. Come here, I said softly. He moved toward me like a man in a trance, his control finally fracturing now that the immediate danger had passed. I pulled him down beside me on the floor among the scattered books, and he collapsed against me, his head on my lap, his arms wrapped around my waist. I was so scared, he admitted into the fabric of my dress. When I got the call that the house was under attack, that they were looking for you, I've never felt fear like that, not when my parents died, not when I've faced death myself. Nothing compared to the terror of losing you. My fingers carted through his hair, feeling him gradually relax under my touch. But you didn't lose me. I'm here. I'm safe. Because of Maria. Because of luck. Because they didn't find the panic room. He pulled back to look at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes broke my heart. I can't do this anymore, Maya. Can't live in fear that every time I leave, you might not be here when I return. Can't keep you in a cage and call it protection. Then what do you want to do? He sat up, pulling something from his pocket. A small velvet box that made my breath catch. I want to marry you. Today. Now. Before anything else can go wrong. Before enemies can regroup. Before either of us has time to overthink this. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was both beautiful and practical. A single diamond. Elegant, but not ostentatious. Set in platinum that gleamed in the morning light. I want you bound to me in every legal and sacred way possible, so the entire world knows that hurting you means declaring war not just on me, but on the Vitale family, on everything I've built. Today, I stared at the ring, my heart racing. I have a judge who owes me favors. He'll perform the ceremony here, this afternoon. Maria can be there, my most trusted men as witnesses. His hands frame my face. I know it's not the wedding every girl dreams of. No white dress, no church, no months of planning. But Maya, I need this. Need you legally mine before the next threat emerges. The practicality of it should have been romantic's death. Instead, it felt oddly perfect. No pretense, no performance. Just two people binding themselves together against a world that wanted to tear them apart. Okay, I said, watching his eyes widen with hope and disbelief. Let's get married today. By sunset, I was wearing a simple white dress Maria had somehow procured from her hospital bed, standing in Dante's library, the room where we'd first kissed, where I'd said yes to staying, where I'd fallen in love with a dangerous man who read philosophy and war strategy before bed. The judge was elderly, distinguished, clearly uncomfortable performing a ceremony in a house that still bore signs of last night's attack. But one look at Dante's face, and he began without protest. Maria watched from a wheelchair, bandaged but smiling through her pain. 6 of Dante's most trusted men stood as witnesses, their expressions solemn, understanding the significance of what was happening. And Dante, he stood before me in a fresh suit, the cuts on his face cleaned and bandaged, his eyes never leaving mine as the judge spoke words about love and commitment, until death do us part. When it came time for vows, Dante took my hands in his, and his voice carried the weight of every promise he'd ever made. Maya, I can't promise you a normal life, can't promise safety or peace or any of the things a good man would offer. But I can promise you this: I will love you with everything I am, dark and light. I will protect you with my last breath. I will choose you over empire, over reputation, over everything except your own happiness. His grip tightened. You walked into my life when I'd forgotten how to feel anything but emptiness, and you reminded me what it means to be human. You're my salvation and my damnation, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. Tears streamed down my face as I found my own words. Dante, you've shown me what it means to be truly seen, to be chosen, to be loved so completely that everything else fades away. You're dangerous and violent and everything I should run from, but you're also gentle and broken and trying so hard to be more than your past. I squeezed his hands. I choose you. The darkness and the light, the monster and the man, all of it. Forever. The judge cleared his throat awkwardly. Do you have rings? Dante produced the diamond ring from this morning, sliding it onto my finger with steady hands. Then, to my surprise, I felt a second ring, a simple platinum band that matched mine, pressed into my palm by Maria, for him. She whispered. Every king needs his queen's mark. I slid the ring onto Dante's finger, watching something fierce and possessive flash across his face. The judge pronounced us married, and Dante kissed me like he was sealing more than vows, like he was binding our souls together, consecrating our union in violence and love and desperate need. Mine, he murmured against my lips. Legally, officially, irrevocably mine. Yours, I agreed, and you're mine too. Don't forget that part. His smile was devastating. Never. The weeks that followed were a strange blend of honeymoon and consolidation of power. Dante took me to one of his properties upstate, a sprawling estate that felt more like a fortress, where we could be alone while he rebuilt operations in the city. We spent mornings in bed, afternoons walking the grounds, evenings by the fire where he taught me about his business, the real business. No more secrets or half-truths. I learned about territories and alliances, about the delicate balance between violence and diplomacy, about the weight he carried keeping an empire running. And at night, we made love like the world might end tomorrow. Like we were trying to prove to ourselves that this was real, that somehow we'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to stay. Maria recovered slowly, moving into the main house permanently. She became something between mother figure and advisor, helping me navigate the complexities of being married to a man everyone feared. My father, we never heard from him again. The debt was settled, paid in full the day I married Dante. I was free of that burden, free of that past, free to build something new. 6 months after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. Dante's reaction was everything. Terror and joy and fierce protectiveness, all warring across his face as I showed him the test. He pulled me against him, his hand spreading across my still flat stomach, and I felt him trembling. A child, he whispered, awed and afraid. Our child. Maya. I don't know how to be a father. My own was murdered when I was 19. I've spent a decade being the villain in everyone's story. How do I... You'll figure it out, I interrupted. covering his hand with mine. The same way I'm figuring out how to be married to a mob boss, the same way we figured out everything else. Together. He kissed me then, tender and desperate, and I knew that whatever came next, whatever enemies emerged, whatever challenges we faced, we'd survive it. Because I'd chosen this life, chosen him. Chosen love wrapped in danger and sealed with violence, and I'd never regretted it for a moment. 3 years later, I watched from the window of our bedroom as Dante taught our daughter, Isabella, how to walk in the garden. She was 2, all dark curls and her father's intense eyes, stubborn and fearless in ways that both delighted and terrified us. Again, Principessa, Dante encouraged, crouching down to her level. You can do it. Isabella took 3 wobbly steps before falling into his arms, her laughter ringing through the afternoon air. He caught her effortlessly, spinning her around until she shrieked with joy. Maria appeared beside me, her own smile soft with affection. Who would have thought? The terrifying Dante Vitale, brought to his knees by a toddler. She has him wrapped around her little finger. I agreed, just like her mother. You both do. Maria squeezed my hand. You saved him, you know, from becoming something completely cold, completely lost. He saved me too, I said quietly, from a life of loneliness and invisibility, from forgetting what it felt like to be wanted. We stood together, watching the dangerous man who ruled an empire with violence and fear play tea party with his daughter in a garden filled with roses, watching him be gentle when the world demanded he be hard, watching him love when everyone expected him to destroy. This wasn't the life I'd imagined that Christmas Eve when I'd agreed to a blind date. Wasn't the safe, normal existence I'd once dreamed of. It was better. Dangerous? Yes. Complicated? Absolutely. But real in ways I'd never experienced before. Rich with love that didn't flinch from darkness. Full of moments like this, watching my husband, my daughter, my strange, violent, beautiful family existing in defiance of a world that said people like us shouldn't work. Dante looked up then, as if sensing my gaze. His eyes found mine through the window, and the smile he gave me was pure. No shadows, no weight, just genuine happiness. I love you, he mouthed. I love you too, I mouthed back. And in that moment, standing in a fortress built by blood and maintained by fear, surrounded by love I never expected to find, I knew I'd made the right choice. Every single terrifying, wonderful, impossible choice that had led me here. To him. To home. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Christmas lights blinked the same red and green as they had that night at the diner, a lifetime ago. But this time, they decorated a home filled with warmth and laughter instead of loneliness. Isabella, now 7, was teaching her little brother Marco, 3 years old and already showing signs of his father's intensity, how to hang ornaments on the massive tree in the living room. Maria supervised, her hair more silver now, her movements slower, but her eyes still sharp and loving. I stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner, watching my family through the doorway. The radio played soft Christmas music. Snow fell gently outside. Dante came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. What are you thinking about, that Christmas Eve? I admitted. When Maria convinced me to meet you. When I walked into your dining room terrified and alone, not knowing my life was about to completely change. Regrets? His voice held a note of vulnerability he only showed with me. I turned in his arms, meeting those dark eyes that had once frightened me, and now felt like home. Not a single one. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. He kissed my forehead, that you had to spend so many Christmases alone before fate, or Maria's meddling, brought you to me. Daddy! Isabella's voice rang out. Come help! Marco keeps putting all the ornaments on one branch. Dante sighed dramatically, but his smile was genuine as he released me. Duty calls. I watched him go. This dangerous man who'd built an empire on fear, now mediating ornament placement disputes between our children. Who still ran his business with iron control, still commanded respect and terror in equal measure, but who also read bedtime stories every night and made pancakes on Sunday mornings. and loved me with an intensity that hadn't dimmed in 8 years. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number made my heart skip. "Still living in your cage, Maya?" S. Sophia. Still out there. Still bitter. Still making her petty threats. But they no longer had power over me. I deleted the message and returned to dinner preparations because I'd learned something important over the years. Sophia was wrong. This wasn't a cage. It was a fortress. A sanctuary. A home built on love that was strong enough to survive darkness. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for safety. Not for normalcy. Not for a life without the dangerous, beautiful, complicated man who taught me that love wasn't always gentle. Sometimes it was fierce and protective, and willing to burn the world to keep you safe. "Mommy," Isabella called. "Come see what we made." I wiped my hands and joined my family by the tree. Dante pulled me against his side. Marco climbing into my arms. Isabella beaming with pride at the slightly lopsided decorations. "It's perfect," I said, meaning it. And it was. My strange, violent, beautiful life, my unexpected salvation, my choice.